Welcome to My Body, My Bump, My Baby, where we help women be empowered, intentional mothers. This podcast is best enjoyed sipping tea or taking a stroll in nature. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be substituted for professional psychological or medical advice, diagnoses, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, midwife, or other qualified health provider with any questions about your personal situation, health, or medical condition. Welcome to another episode of My Body, My Bump, My Baby. Today, we are going to be chatting about celebrating pregnancy as a rite of passage and just kind of getting into what this means and how we can celebrate such an amazing event. So, one of the things I love to do is watch documentaries on different communities, different cultures, and specifically tribal communities. And one of the things that stands out to me for tribal communities is there is still a lot of ritual, there is still a lot of ceremony around major milestones in life. And I love this. I think this is so important, and it's something that seems to have gotten lost in our culture in the United States. There are some tribal cultures that make a very big annual ceremony and celebration to mark the transition of a young boy moving into manhood. And it's something that is exciting, and it's something that the entire community celebrates, and it's very meaningful to the young men. Usually it marks, who they're going to be as an adult, and it is the beginning of allowing them to take a mate and become a father and have children and do all of those things. But also within the community, they are looked at differently, right? They have transitioned from boyhood into adulthood. And I don't really feel like we have anything like that in the United States for men. But when I think about a female body, we actually do, and it's because the body has milestones that it's going to go through that we cannot ignore, right? So in a woman's life, there are just a few times in her life where her body and her mind will undergo significant changes in a very small amount of time. Clearly, conception to 1 year old for everybody, everybody's body is big change. And then there's puberty, which is the beginning of moving from a young girl into a woman. And then later in life, pregnancy. And this is such an important milestone, and I think that there's a lot of celebration around welcoming a new baby and a new human into the family, and I want to ensure that we take the time to recognize, honor, and celebrate the woman who is becoming a mother. Whether it's the first time or the fifth time, it is still a very important time in a person's life, and there are so many things that we can do to celebrate it. So one of the things I want to start off with is just let's go into understanding what a rite of passage is, because I think that we don't really celebrate rite of passage here, and so it could be kind of a confusing idea or concept. It's very simple. It's its definition is a ritual, event, or experience that marks or constitutes a major milestone or change in a person's life. Well, for sure, becoming pregnant definitely is a major milestone or change in a person's life, for sure. So those changes, some of them are super obvious, at least at some point in the pregnancy, they become super obvious, right? Like the body changes, the belly swells, some things that the body is doing that maybe not so like plain as day would be, you growing a completely new organ, the placenta, right? Growing a human, that's obvious, but you can't see that little human just yet. And then, all of these hormonal changes that are happening in the body. And with those hormonal changes, the mind starts to change, right? There is like a little switch in the body that triggers the mama mind, and the mama mind turns on, and, a lot of the way we think starts to shift. I don't know about you ladies, but, as soon as you're pregnant, I definitely felt like the idea of this baby was all consuming. It was very difficult to focus on anything other than baby. I would go in and out of these phases of like thinking about baby and then focusing on work and then thinking about baby and focusing on life, and I think that is just part of this, protective mama mind that turns on. But for sure, your priorities start to make a big shift. And it may not happen, as quickly as the switch of a light, but it does definitely happen over the length of the pregnancy. I feel like it's easy to ignore early on in pregnancy, especially before we can feel the baby and before we're quite showing. But later in pregnancy, it's not very easy to ignore. And, you think about things like, I really want the best for my baby. I want to, change my eating habits maybe and become a little bit healthier. I also notice a lot of women will begin to take on some type of new exercise routine that maybe they didn't have in their life prior to baby, such as prenatal yoga. And then, maybe there's some hard decision changes, such as making the choice to quit smoking. That's not an easy thing to do. A lot of women will go completely dry, meaning they quit drinking. They don't even have like a little glass of wine here and there. They completely dry. Or even quitting caffeine. I mean, whoosh, could you imagine if you have like a really great coffee routine that you enjoy daily in your life and having to go cold turkey and get rid of that for the health of your baby? I mean, that's hard, but it's a good choice that you can make. And it's one of those big choices that we make when our priorities start to shift because of the baby. And then you'll notice your emotions become super volatile, right? So maybe you never cried, nothing really got you down, very strong, empowered person. And as soon as you're pregnant, you notice that you're crying at the silliest things, almost childlike, like something didn't go my way today. And so I am just crying about it. And I know many of us have been there, and, you can laugh about it. But in that moment, it's like, this is happening. I can't believe this is happening, but it's happening. I'm crying over spilled milk. Also noticing maybe your stamina for intense media goes down. So like murder shows or horror shows or war shows, or even just the basics like the news suddenly becomes very difficult to consume. And like, it's just so taxing and emotional that a lot of people just are like, I can't even watch the news anymore because I can't get through it without having a emotional upheaval, right? And then so that's body changes, mental changes, hormonal changes. And also there are soul or spirit changes. And these ones are definitely less obvious. But I like to highlight them because I think that they're incredibly important, especially during this time in life. So y'all have heard of the mama glow, right? So the mama glow is like that beautiful glow that a pregnant woman has. And it usually will for sure show up in second trimester, sometimes a little bit earlier, but sometimes, first trimester, the mama glow is not quite a glow. It's green and we're just not feeling good. But the one thing that I love about the mama glow is there are some spiritual belief systems that believe that we are made up of energy and the soul is a point of spiritual energy, which we can call the light of the soul. And so if you think about the soul having a luminosity, when a woman is pregnant, there are two souls or two soul lights within one earthbound body. Hence, for me, I like to say, that's that pregnancy glow. We got two souls illuminating out of one body, and it's beautiful and it's amazing and it's super attractive. Like a lot of people are very attracted to people who are pregnant just because that glow is so enticing and beautiful and you just kind of want to be near it. Thinking outside of this soul glow and moving into chakras, I don't want to get too deep into like the basics of chakras. If you have some experience with chakras, I feel like most people do just because of yoga, but if you have experience with chakras, you'll follow. And if you don't, just kind of go do a little Google and find out a little bit about chakras. But during pregnancy and even during labor and birth, at some point within that whole cycle, each chakra is going to become energetically charged and it opens the door for change. It's a very unique time. And, you can either recognize that you're in this place where you could make really big spiritual changes. Or we can, rather than embracing it and having an open heart about it and an open mind and maybe exploring that. Also, you could kind of either be oblivious or hide from it. Some people, just really don't like change in their life. But here's the reality. Pregnancy will create change. It's not something that you can avoid. You can definitely ignore it, but it's still going to happen when you're not looking. And so, one of the things I like to teach my students is, recognize that you are in a place of so much potential and maybe start to embrace that potential joyfully and figure out a way to release the old skin and intentionally begin to grow or nurture a new skin, because it's going to happen. The change is going to happen. So might as well participate and hopefully guide that change and get what you want from it instead of waking up one day and just feeling, kind of lost and wondering who you are and having to figure it all out then. So what is this rite of passage? What is it? I mean, clearly we're pregnant, our body's changing and we're creating a human, but it's so much more than that, right? In my opinion, it is. It's a time of transformation where we get to leave behind the old and have the opportunity to be in creation, where, yes, we're creating a human, but we're creating so much more than just a human, if you think about it, right? We're creating a mother. So our identity is beginning to evolve and morph into the mother archetype, which is like nurturing and selfless and protective and, providing unconditional love and devotion and caring. Or even on the shadow side of that, maybe, becoming a little bit more possessive and controlling or overbearing, because that's like that protective mama vibe, right? And we're moving into that mother from the child, right? That child archetype where maybe prior to pregnancy, you're still in a place of, very naive and playfulness and trusting of everything around you and super innocent and, maybe doesn't have a whole lot of experience, or maybe doesn't have a lot of burdens or commitments in life. And just kind of making that switch over from maybe being a little bit trusting and vulnerable to responsible and empowered. It's huge, right? And not only are we creating the mother, but we're also creating a whole world around us that is shifting. Our focus is going to be moving from ourselves, right? Everything is I, and moving to this baby. If you happen to be in a relationship at the time, it's going to definitely begin to shift the dynamics of the relationship, right? Because prior to pregnancy, the relationship was maybe all on myself and all on my partner, and vice versa. Partner is all on their self and all on you. And then suddenly, this transformation begins to happen, and our priorities are like, oh my gosh, now we have a third person in this relationship, and we need to provide for them, and we need to take care of them. But we also have to make joint choices, whereas before is like, you do you, boo, right? Like whatever you want, you do however you're going to do. I'm going to do me, and you're going to respect that I'm doing me. But now we have this baby, and somehow we have to find like a common ground to take care of this baby, right? So much change, not just in the body and the mind, but in who you are, like your persona, and in your relationships. I mean, I see it a lot. Even in prenatal yoga, we talk about this often, where external relationships are beginning to shift in pregnancy, right? Where mama was, my mom, and she always was playing that role of my mom, and all of a sudden you're pregnant and you're starting to be like, wait, your mom, you're overstepping your boundaries. You are not the mom of this baby. And, boundaries are being created, and that relationship is beginning to evolve and to shift, which is beautiful. It's also hard. But it's happening, and it's going to happen. It's not something that we can hide from, right? And through this, maybe, some fears will come up, some doubts and some worries. And so we're also trying to learn about our strengths. And even as we're learning about strengths at the same time, we have to find a way to surrender, right? Because in pregnancy, the body is changing so darn much. It's very much out of our control. And it can feel a little bit uncomfortable being so out of control. And in pregnancy, that's like the very first time for most people where you're feeling like that. Obviously, once the baby comes, that, ends up being something that you feel often, because the little ones never do what we expect them to do, right? So it's the Rite of Passage for pregnancy is a massive journey. It's so beautiful and such a blessing that the divine had it take 10 months for us to just wrap our brain around this new life that we're creating. So how do we prepare for such a big journey, for such a rite of passage? I think that it's easy to become overwhelmed and maybe even a little bit anxious for various reasons in pregnancy. And I would say make a commitment to leave space to experience pregnancy with curiosity and wonder. Find a way to, yes, maybe there is overwhelm, because there's a lot to learn and there's a lot to plan and there's, so much change, but also try to see if you can find space to just be like, wow, look at what my body is doing. This is incredible. The entire journey, beginning, in pregnancy through labor and birth, and even in the very few, 6 weeks of new motherhood, it's just amazing. It's just amazing how much has been created and how much has changed in such a short amount of time. So seeing if you can find space for curiosity and wonder within that journey as you're preparing. I would also say, it's a great time to begin to reflect on yourself, right? Because I just talked about it being a very big opportunity for you to make some big spiritual leaps or some big spiritual changes or work because of the chakras being so lit up during pregnancy and during labor. I would say, one thing that you can do is look into the Marie Kondo method. I am all about cleaning out the clutter, get rid of the things that don't serve you, right? And she's usually talking about household items, but I'm thinking, you really could take that method and look inward, right? So asking yourself, looking in the mirror and asking yourself, what here does not serve me, right? We all have stuff that we're working on and it's an evolution, right? It's always changing, but maybe you have noticed there are some things in your life or some things that you perpetuate that, just keep continuing to cause problems and you just haven't found the space or the time to work on it or just really reflect on it so that you could let those things go. I would say, this pregnancy, 10 months is a great time to begin to work on those things. Maybe you start to do some journaling. Maybe you begin to talk to a therapist. Maybe you just reflect inward and do some meditation and the whys and the understanding start to unfold because we definitely are in a place where we are kind of shedding old skin to make room for this new, beautiful, evolved flesh. And so, taking some time and asking yourself, what things in my life, what things do I do that are nourishing my soul? What things, what relationships or actions do I do in my life that speak to my heart? And what things do I do or participate in or relationships do I have that no longer serve me? They don't bring me joy. Maybe they're complete opposite of bringing you joy. They just bring you hurt. And trying to figure out how can I let these things go? And obviously, you guys are probably like, B, come on. That's easier said than done. And I totally agree. I went through a divorce, and after my divorce, I kind of did this, internal reflection and, Marie Kondo method, clean out the junk. And, it was hard. It was hard to look into the mirror and have to recognize that, hey, you know what? There are some patterns here. And the common denominator is me. And so, I need to go do the work. And it took me like 5 years to do the work. This is a unique time. I think that there's opportunity to do work in a short amount of time because the body, mind, and soul is in a place of renewal and release. So it's not a bad time to tackle those. And I will say, even if there is past childhood trauma, if there is some really all childhood trauma, but specifically any kind of sexual childhood trauma, I highly recommend that you begin to do some work into that area, because there is a possibility for some people that those things will affect the labor and the birth. And if there's childhood trauma that is not sexual, you're going to become a parent. You're going to become a parent of a little person. And, you kind of want to have the clutter of your story cleared out, or at a minimum, have a good understanding of your story so that you can do it differently and you can protect and keep that little one as safe as you possibly can. So, continuing to talk about preparing for the journey, one of the things I would highly recommend is to begin to take some classes. And you want to move into the huntress archetype. So the huntress is not the same as the gatherer archetype. Don't go looking for like every little piece of data that you can possibly get your hands on, because I'll tell you right now, 1, it's overwhelming. 2, you're going to find that thing A is the best thing you can do for your baby, and thing A is also the worst thing you can do for your baby. And so it just gets very confusing. So the huntress, unlike the gatherer is just gathering everything, right? If I go out and I'm gathering, let's just say raspberries, the gatherer is just they're going to gather the ones that are kind of pinkish white. They're not quite ripe. And they're going to gather the ripe ones, and they're going to gather the overripe ones, and they're going to gather the ones that fell on the ground and have dirt on them and that have been smashed. They're just gathering everything. And, in the end, you got a lot of stuff that doesn't really work for you, right? The huntress, she's focused. She's got very laser focused goals, and she is on a mission, and she knows what she's looking for, right? She is looking for that perfectly ripe raspberry, and she is going to be on hunt for only those, right? So she leaves behind the pinkish white raspberries that are underripe and too tart and too hard, and she leaves behind the ones that fell on the floor and got smashed, and she leaves behind the ones that are overripe that are, she's not going to really taste that good. She's going to leave those ones for the birds. And she only picks the perfectly ripe, beautiful red raspberries, and those are the ones that she takes with her. So when you are looking to take some classes, it's important to first ask, what is it that I need to know to give birth to this baby? What is it that I need to get from a class, right? So rather than going and just gathering all the information like the gatherer did and finding that there's a lot of stuff that doesn't work for you or doesn't make sense for you, finding that focal point, determining your goal. What is my mission? Like, what am I after here? And once you find that, then start looking for the class that is going to give you what you're looking for, right? And in this journey, as you begin to work on yourself and you begin to learn about pregnancy and birth, I think that it's really easy for us to become rigid with expectations and judgments. And I'm going to say, as we prepare for giving birth, that we really want to try to know what we need, but also know that, your way or my way is not the only way. Everybody's going to approach things differently. And also, birth doesn't do what it's told. So even though you have in your mind what this is going to look like or how you expect it to unfold, birth might just have a completely different storyline that it would like you to follow. So I would say definitely know where you're headed and know how to accomplish, your goal on where you're headed, but also be open-minded, right? Just know that birth will always provide a fork in the road. Rarely does things with birth just go as planned. And the same as with pregnancy too, right? You're chugging along, everything's going well. And then all of a sudden, 34 weeks, you're like, oh no, I have gestational hypertension, right? Like, there's your fork in the road. And all of a sudden we have to, release some of those expectations that we had and, just accept things that are a little bit different than what we had planned. So I guess my point is, as we prepare for the journey, try to definitely have your goals, definitely know what you're after and what you're looking for, but be flexible. There's so much to prepare for, right? And there's so much to know. And suddenly this, 10-month time just starts to seem very short and it goes by so darn fast. I know that some people at the beginning of pregnancy are like, oh, it's so new and I have plenty of time. And then one day they wake up and they're like, oh my gosh, where did the time go? I'm feeling overwhelmed. I still have so much to do to prepare. And I totally get that. And it's super easy to get wrapped up with all of the things that we need to learn and all of the classes that we need to take and planning baby showers and gathering items for the baby. And all of those things are, super fun and exciting and they all need to be done. But we do need to allow some space to celebrate this great change in our life. For some people, this happens only once. And for other people, maybe a small handful of times. But it is a very special time in a person's life. And making some space to celebrate is just, gonna stay with you for the rest of your life. So here are a couple ideas that I have for how you might be able to celebrate this pregnancy journey, this rite of passage. One thing that I love is journaling through a book called Sacred Pregnancy. It's called Sacred Pregnancy, a loving guide and journal for expectant mother, or maybe just expectant, by Annie Dalter. And the book is really sweet. It gives you an idea of how your body is changing each week and how your baby is changing each week. And it also leaves space for you to journal about, how you're feeling, what came up for you, which is, I think, super sweet because it's a book that you can keep and many years down the road, maybe on the birthday of that little one, especially once they get older and they're teenagers, It's a nice time to be able to pull that book out and read some passages about what you were experiencing and what your highlights were. And, it's just a beautiful way to document and remember and, maybe even revisit some of those beautiful feelings that you had that maybe you forgot about after time had passed. Another thing that I think is nice is to make an agreement with yourself to celebrate the little wins and the little milestones of pregnancy with some pampering. So celebrating with a lovely body massage or even a foot massage. I mean, maybe you don't have enough time in your busy schedule to get in a full 60 minutes or 75-minute massage, but you do have time for a 30-minute foot massage. I think that is just phenomenal, and you would feel so good afterwards. Or maybe you can treat yourself to a nice piece of pregnancy clothing. I feel like a lot of people don't want to invest too much money in pregnancy clothing because it's a short amount of time. And, a lot of people wonder how much wear they would get out of their investment. But, if you are looking at it as a celebratory treat or a celebratory gift for yourself, I feel like it's a nice way to treat yourself to a piece of really nice, comfortable pregnancy clothing. And then another way that you can celebrate by pampering yourself would be just like make space for a nap. Oh my gosh. Like the little things sometimes make you feel so darn good. And maybe once you get into third trimester, a nap is how you make it through it, right? Because it's a lot of work to create a little human being and maybe watch another toddler or have a full-time job, right? So making space to get that nap in for yourself. Another nice way to celebrate would be to have a soak. So if you are anywhere near a mineral bath spa or a hot spring that has, the different levels of heat in the hot springs, like usually like higher level is hot and the lower levels are cooler. So maybe get yourself a nice mineral soak or a hot spring soak. And if you don't have anything like that near you, you could always draw yourself a really nice, relaxing bath with some Epsom salts and maybe a few drops of essential oils. And, turn down the lights and maybe have some flicker candles going, enjoy reading a little book or something, and just relax and connect with your baby for an hour. Another one that I really, really love is prenatal photo shoots. And I feel like it's kind of like 50-50. In our prenatal yoga classes, we have about half of the mamas are like, for sure, they're doing a prenatal photo shoot. And half of them are actually like very much on the fence. Like, I don't know. And everybody has their reasons, but I will say, this is what I'm going to say. Yes, it's an investment, and I get, like, if you're on the fence, maybe not wanting to make that investment, but I think even if you're on the fence, go out on a limb and do it, because maybe right then and there, you're not 100% into how you're feeling, you do start to feel uncomfortable and big and, those type of things. And some people, they celebrate that really well. And some people, they just feel really uncomfortable in their skin. But down the road, after baby has arrived and, especially like 1, 2, 10, 12, 14 years down the road, gosh, having the ability to pull out those images and just look back and remember how sweet and precious that time was, I think is a phenomenal gift to give yourself. So don't think short term, think long term on that one, especially if you're kind of like, I don't know, I'm not sure how I'm feeling about, taking images of my body in this state. If you're kind of feeling a little uncomfortable in your skin, most people that I know are glad that they've done it. And I've also met people who didn't do it and they regret that they didn't do it, And here's the thing is you can't go back and get those images. Once the time has passed, the time has passed. So you're only pregnant with that baby one time ever, right? In your entire life. That baby, you have one pregnancy with them. And so I think it's worth doing. I've even had some mamas who didn't do it with one baby and want to do it with a second baby, but they feel like they're dishonoring the first one by doing that because they didn't celebrate in the same way. So, really think those things through. I know they seem like such a small little thing, but, these are some of the things that people go through, the choices that they're making. So I'm saying, when in doubt, do the prenatal photo shoot. I think you'll enjoy it down the road at a minimum. And, it is nice to just, reflect and just see those beautiful images and be like, gosh, I was just glowing and I looked amazing and gorgeous, but that's not how I felt, right? And another one, I think it's a little bit harder to find nowadays, but I used to do this a lot for clients. I don't have the time to do it anymore, but I used to make belly casts, and God, these things are so beautiful if they're done right. A raw belly cast captures the shape and the size, and it is definitely fun down the road to grab that belly cast and put it up to your body and be like, wow, look at this, right? But a finished belly cast is amazing. A finished one is, after they would like add some layers, smooth out the gauze, and paint it with something special. They're just gorgeous. And they have full belly casts that include the breast mold and maybe a hands in there. And then they just have just the belly. And those belly only ones are super sweet because I feel like you can, if you get it finished, it turns into a bowl that's just really pretty and special. And, you can put little blankets or washcloths or, little baby items in there, and it's super cute. So, those are some ideas of ways that you can celebrate the pregnancy. But I also wanted to give some ways to celebrate the actual rite of passage that you're going through. You can start to prepare your labor space just by really making it special and beautiful. So maybe stringing some white twinkle lights in your room or whatever space you're going to choose to do some of your labor in. Maybe purchase some battery-operated flicker candles that you can kind of set around the house. Hannah went and got the a string of salt rock lights that are just absolutely beautiful and I think are going to bring really great energy to her space. Maybe create your own birthing essential oil blend and, start putting that on at night when you're going to sleep, or put it on when you're taking a bath, and start preparing to get your body familiar with relaxing every time you smell that scent or that combination, that blend. Another beautiful rite of passage is have a blessing way. I am sure that you have some friend or coworker or family member who would love to throw you a blessing way. And if you're not familiar with a blessing way, we do have a podcast episode on what a blessing way is. So check that out when you have time. You could plan a baby moon with your partner. I think that's super special. And that's not just for first-time parents, You could be third, fourth-time parents and plan a baby moon. I mean, there's some logistics that you'll have to, handle, but you guys are pros at this point. So you can, make a little day away or a weekend away and just celebrate each other once again and have that special time. Oh, I love getting bellies hennaed at around 36, 37 weeks. That is also a really wonderful celebration. The henna art is a nice time to just sit and relax for, an hour or two while it's getting done. And the henna should stain the belly for a good week to 10 days, which is really exciting because it just kind of helps you to mark as you're getting closer to the baby coming. Some people would get theirs at like 38, 39 weeks with the idea that the henna would stay on their belly during the labor and they can kind of look down and think about this beautiful baby that's coming and just remember why they're going through all of the hard work. One of my partners and I did this beautiful breastfeeding photo shoot. So we hennaed the mama's shoulder, like maybe one side down to her breast a little bit, nowhere near where baby was going to be eating. But we did a beautiful henna on the shoulder. And then a few days later, once the dye got nice and dark, we had a beautiful breastfeeding photo shoot. And it was just so special for the mama and the baby. And those images were just so precious. And I think that hopefully those are images that she would enjoy for many years down the road. So even celebrating after the baby has arrived, a newborn baby shoot, newborn photo shoot, the breastfeeding photo shoot, also massage. Don't forget about massage once baby is born. I know that we're just kind of getting by with the basics, but, if you find a good massage therapist, you can just bring your baby with you and get some you time. Just get a little bit of a rub. I love celebrating pregnancy and birth. The whole process is just amazing and beautiful. And I think it's such an important time in our life to just make space for the changes and the evolution and the growth and to honor it and celebrate it. So it was super special for me to be able to share these ideas with you. I hope that you take a little bit of this with you and maybe just do one thing to celebrate this really special rite of passage in your life.